Well, there is this naked woman on the bird bath like a bird. She's perched on the bird bath. And we're like, holy shit, what is this? And for a midget with no legs. I shit all night long. Wearing saran wrap preparation H.
Mm-hmm. Their child.
Yeah, their child's in the car. He walks up and he shoots both of them point blank. And then just leaves, drives back to Texas.
Welcome to 1023 Podcast, from on scene to on air with those who were there. Before we get started, we want to give a shout out to one of our all-time favorite companies, 1350 Apparel. 1350 Apparel is a law enforcement owned and operated apparel company based out of West Palm Beach, Florida. We here at 1023 Podcast love what they're all about, and many of us actually wear 1350 products while on duty due to the superior quality of everything they make. 1350 Apparel also worked with us to design and produce the first ever official 1023 Podcast t-shirts, which are awesome in fit, function, and style. So if you're a true patriot and you want to support a great organization with a great mission full of great people, go check out 1350 Apparel and get yourself and your loved ones some awesome gear. Lastly, the views and opinions of the individuals featured on 1023 Podcast do not necessarily reflect those of their employers or their profession. Viewer discretion is advised. This is 1023 Podcast, episode 10-1, with Brandon Jones, John Fisher, and myself, Hunter Fithen. Also featuring my lovely and talented wife, Ashley Fithen. Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Yeah. Good evening.
I like this formal opening. We kind of did this on the fly for episode 1, and it turned out good. So, we're here with episode 10-1. Our last episode was 10-0, and we're still rolling with our 10 code themed episode titles. But tonight, we are here with Sergeant John Fisher, who actually works at the same agency that myself and Lieutenant Jones do. But we're going to kind of just shoot the bull and talk about, Fisher, why did you become a cop, and why did you want to do the whole law enforcement thing, and we're going to talk about some of the crazy stuff that you've seen and done.
So mine was mainly, it was a family business for me. So
yeah,
my cousins, my uncle, my grandpa, everybody's in law enforcement. So that's kind of, I grew up always knowing that that's what I wanted to do. I didn't have any aspirations to do anything else. I had other aspirations to do things inside of law enforcement, but it was always going to be law enforcement.
Okay.
There was a time I wanted to be a game warden.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, there was just different things that I wanted to do, but I always knew I was going to carry a badge and a gun at some point.
That's cool. Now you're, so I'm sorry, how many family members did you have that were cops?
3.
Yeah.
Well, no. So my grandpa, his brother, which would have been my great uncle. I have a cousin that's currently in law enforcement, and then they had my grandpa had a cousin as well that was in law enforcement. So, and they were all law enforcement in the same area, and we had some cool old pictures of them, black and white photos of them with the old cop uniforms, and it's pretty cool.
That is cool. I think it's cool too to see, like, with it being like almost like you said, like a family business, to see like how the field has changed, like, over the decades and everything, and
right.
Kind of different family members in different eras of it. One thing that Jones and I talked about in the last episode was neither of us have any family that were in law enforcement, huh? We were the first in our respective families.
Groundbreakers.
So. Groundbreakers, yeah. But that's cool that you're keeping the tradition alive.
I'm trying.
How long have you been a cop?
For going on 12 years.
Going on 12.
12
okay.
years.
Yeah. Now, I know you and I both used to work for the same municipal PD, not at the same time, but how long were you at the PD before you went sheriff's office?
I worked PD for 8 years.
Okay, cool. How was that?
It was interesting. I mean, that's where I gained most of my experience. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, and I still recommend somebody coming fresh out of the academy some young kid go to a police department where you're going to get
Yeah.
all the experience you want. And
Yeah, I would agree with that. It's whenever I was there, like the call volume was way, way, way higher than it is currently where we are at the sheriff's office. We still have a pretty good call volume at the sheriff's office, but yeah, the PD was a lot more busy when it came to calls.
For sure.
Yeah.
For sure.
Well, tell us about, and I guess we'll all kind of chime in on this because I know we all work together and we've all seen some crazy things. You have to do some crazy things, but that seems to be the number one thing that people want to know about cops is, hey, what's some of the craziest things you ever seen or craziest things you ever done? You got any stories like that come to mind?
Well, I mean, if you backtrack a little bit, I never thought that when I got into law enforcement, I didn't have any interest of being on a SWAT team or anything like that. I didn't think that was anything I would do.
Yeah.
I kind of wanted to be a canine guy.
Yeah.
Before that, I thought it was like, man, that'd be cool to have a dog.
Mm.
Well, lo and behold, I got thrown into a position on the SWAT team and started out just being a member of the team. It was kind of unorganized. The person that was running the SWAT team at that time had resigned, and me being, I don't know, I might have been 4 or 5 years into law enforcement, and they said, hey, you're going to run this team now. I'm like, okay, well, I don't know anything about it. I've never even done anything SWAT related yet. Never been to training. I'd never been on a SWAT call out.
Yeah.
Hadn't served any warrants or done anything, and you're going to be in
I
charge of it.
didn't know that. Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah. I'm like, well, okay.
And that was another agency,
right?
Not the one we're currently.
Yeah, it was. A municipal agency, but so got into that, and I mean, I've seen some crazy things going through it now, but probably the craziest thing, and it's gonna sound made up, but
a lot of stories do.
Yeah, but one of my craziest call outs would have to been for a midget with no legs.
Yeah, we're gonna need more detail.
So,
because I've never heard this full story. Like I know what you're referring to, but
this female midget with no legs had previously shot at another officer at a neighboring city. Almost shot him in the head.
Huh.
I'm sure y'all remember that.
Yeah.
And well, we had another incident a few weeks later where she was back at her house. Same type of call, same situation. Well, this time they were like, you know what? We're not going to go in there. Let's call the SWAT team over there.
Sure.
Okay. So
midget at large.
We show up and we try to, make contact with her. Nothing. We decide that, hey, we're going to bust out a couple of windows. We had this drone at the time. Yeah. It was another agency that brought a drone out. We were going to try to fly the drone through the house to see if we can find her.
Yeah.
Well, I got tasked with taking the drone to go put it in the window. Well, I go up, put the drone in the window. As soon as it takes off, it immediately crashes.
Of course.
Well, now we have a rescue operation for our drone.
Yeah.
So we couldn't use gas. You can't gas somebody that can't walk.
Well, what did you say the initial call out was? What was the reason for it that you guys were deployed to the house?
She was doing, the previous call where she had shot at somebody, she was in there suicidal, had a gun. And I guess they went in to try to make contact, and that's when she popped rounds off at her, or at them. And so this time it was the same similar call. She was armed, was wanting to take her own life. And so that's why they called us there. They, wanted to proceed with more caution.
Sure.
So, anyway, we wait for a while. We can't put gas in there. Our tactics are very limited on a situation like this. So, So we form our team up. We go up. We breach the door. We go in, and immediately what I see is a dirty diaper on the floor, an adult diaper. So we have to step over this diaper, and by this time I'm not gonna lie, I'm nervous. I'm like, we're either gonna have to shoot this lady, or she's going to shoot one of us. But I don't think this is ending any other way.
Yeah.
And of course, you're thinking, and you're like, what's the news going to say when we have to shoot this lady? And what,
But you're nervous because of the previous encounter.
Right.
Well, in other words, would you have been nervous with her had that not happened a few weeks before where she actually shot at an officer?
Not as nervous, no. But I mean, it was one of the first times that I can remember actually fearing for my safety, because I was like, one, we're going to hesitate. It's just it's going to be a natural thing. If we see this lady, nobody wants to pull the trigger.
Well, and she had another physical disability also with her hands.
Right. Yeah. She had webbed hands, so she wasn't able to, firmly grip things, but she's able to fire a gun.
Yeah.
And so we see the dirty dopper, and we're moving through tactically through this house, and we see an AR-15 laying on the floor, and we're like, this lady's packing some heat. Like, what else does she have in here? So we step over the dopper, step over the gun, and we start moving through the house, and we finally see her, laying on the ground, and we're able to call out to her, and luckily she didn't have anything. She assured us, she's like, I don't have anything. I'm not going to do anything to you guys. So we were able to go in there and get her out and get her the help she needed.
Okay, good. Yeah. Well, see, that's sketchy. Situations like that are sketchy too, because I mean, we've all been there. But whenever you're going to something like a suicidal subject, it's like they could be highly dangerous. The way I was taught was, suicidal can be homicidal, so you got to watch it. But it's also like you said, you don't want to go in there and you never go into a house really with the intention to shoot anybody, but especially someone who needs help like that, and has these severe disabilities. Well,
we knew she's willing to pull the trigger. She
shot at a cop
before. So
I think that speaks to how broken the system is, because it was only a matter of just a few weeks. And you guys were out with her. I mean, from the point where she shot at the officer, it was just a few weeks till you guys are deployed to a different residence. But to her, again, it shows how the system is broken, because she never should have been out.
No.
Whether it be a jail or the
a mental health facility
she was at, she didn't stay there very long, and obviously is still a problem. So that just speaks to how broken the system is, where you have this person with all these problems and physical disabilities, and yet in a matter of weeks she's out. And I think a lot of people don't understand that that aren't in law enforcement, really.
Yeah. Well, and it creates a weird dynamic too, because if you go online for any amount of time, you'll see there's tons of keyboard commandos out there that comment on every police video where the cops are interacting with someone with a mental illness or who's suicidal or whatever. And you'll always see people talk about hey, why are the cops there? They're not even committing a crime, blah, blah, blah. But then it's well, when you have someone who is suicidal and they have a tendency to shoot at other people, or they're dangerous to other people, there's really no other option that society has right now where you could try and send a mental health professional to go talk to him, but they don't want to go up there. If it's hey, last time they were like this, they were shooting at cops. So why don't you waltz up there and see if you can chat with them? But it's kind of, for lack of a better option, the cops get sent to a lot of situations like that are just,
there's nobody else to go.
It's thrown in our laps, because we're the fix hole.
Yeah.
You don't know what to do.
The cops. Exactly. Someone told me once, and it always stuck with me. They said that law enforcement is society's garbage disposal, and it's just all the nasty, gritty things that no one wants to deal with, like suicidal midget with no legs and webbed hands that is shooting at people. That's gonna get thrown to the cops.
Right.
So many things that we just got to clean up.
Well, and I think we'll probably have the officer that was involved in that first, that was shot at by that individual on our show at some point. But he's told me the story, and I won't get into it too much, but he made certain decisions that day because of the disability she had that put him in danger, nearly cost him his life. Had she been better on her aim, he wouldn't be here today. I mean, she just missed him by inches.
Sure. Yeah.
And he made decisions because of, and I won't get into it too far, but he told me he just didn't want to see himself on the news having shot somebody like that. So that's why he didn't shoot back. That's why a lot of decisions were made that day that we'll get him on here and we'll talk about it. But it could have cost him his life for fear of what people may have thought about him.
Yeah.
Literally.
Well, that's what society has come to nowadays anyway, that's something in the back of an officer's mind in the middle of a situation what is the news going to say about me?
Yeah.
And that was after he was shot at.
Right.
Again, I don't want to get too far into it. I'm trying to. I have a problem with doing that, but that's really
you're right, though.
after he was shot at. He was still afraid of what the news would say about him shooting somebody like that.
Right.
Yeah, suicidal subject calls are one of those, like, for the modern officer, like, it's kind of a damned if you do, damned if you don't type of thing, because it's like, hey, we, like, someone calls the cops, like, we don't just show up on our own, but, like, someone calls the cops and says, hey, you know, my loved one is in there, they said they're going to kill themselves, like, please help them. Okay, well, you know, we'd love to help them, but, like, if we can't really get in the house, we don't have anything that pushes us in there, well, like, there is the option, like, well, why don't we just leave? You know, no one's committing a crime or anything. It's not a crime to be suicidal.
And there's agencies that are doing that.
Yes, and that there's been a big push for that. A lot of bigger agencies now are doing that, but then they're leaving and these people kill themselves, and then the backlash is like, the cops didn't do anything, like they could have saved this person.
And we may have had the same conversation on our last show. I don't remember.
We might have done some of it.
But still, if people have legs, they can move to their neighbor's house. If they got a set of keys, they can drive somewhere. I mean, they don't just become out of their mental emergency just because the cops leave. I mean, it doesn't fix anything at all.
Not at all.
No.
They're no longer contained.
Yeah. Well, I gotta know though, whenever y'all go in, like y'all reach this door, you look in there and you see the dirty diaper on the floor. I gotta know, like, did anyone, like, was that, like, called out, like, a hazard? Like, did anyone step on it, or, like,
I think it was pointed at, because I was running as a point man at this time, carrying a shield, and, you know, I kind of step over it, and I just kind of watch out.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, that's the other thing you gotta worry about nowadays is booby traps. So.
Yeah, for sure, yeah. Biological.
Yeah,
biological
warfare. Yeah. Oh my gosh. Yeah. Well, I don't know what episode it's going to be, but eventually we're going to get the guy who dealt with that initial situation. But I'd love for you two to compare notes so we can.
I've been around for some of his crazy stuff. So
yeah.
There's video evidence of a lot of it. So
yeah. Well. Yeah. There's a lot of now with like the body cameras and everything, there's a lot of good video evidence of a lot of wild stories that people wouldn't believe otherwise.
Right.
But yeah, no, it's good. Well, I know whenever I switched from the PD to sheriff's office, you were actually my FTO, my field training officer for a while. But I think one thing I was going to mention since you were going to be on tonight was I think like one of the first uses of force I got into at the sheriff's office was when me and you fought like that 17-year-old kid.
Right. And that was another mental health situation.
Yeah. Yeah, that's exactly what that was.
It was more of a drug-induced one, but it was still a mental health situation.
Yeah.
We were called to fix a problem that the parents couldn't handle, and it turned into a fight.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Yeah, and I remember the way that came out, too. Like, you know, these folks are calling 911 and basically saying, hey, like our teenage son, he's out of control. He's throwing things around the house. He's being really, really violent. Like, we need some help. So we went out there for that, and then the long story short of it is like it was a house way out in our county. But as soon as we rolled up, we got there about the same time. I saw the kid, and he was walking out of the house, and he looked all pissed off, and he was going towards a vehicle. But I called out to him, and I was like, "Hey, man, like, come here for a second, like." You know, with the sheriff's office, we got a call here, got to talk to you. But yeah, he came over and he was cool at first. And I told him I just wanted to check him out and see if make sure he didn't have any weapons on him. And he was cool with that. And so he put his hands on my car, and I checked him out. And while I was doing that, though, he decided to try and dart off. And that's when that started.
Yep.
That's when I also found out that, so I learned at the PD that getting into use of force, like fighting someone in a parking lot, is really unpleasant because it'll tear up your knees and everything. But I learned pretty early on at the county that I don't know what's worse, is wrestling someone in a parking lot or wrestling someone in a caliche driveway.
Caliche driveway,
yeah. Because I got all cut up on that one too.
Oh yeah, I had holes in my clothes and
yeah. So yeah, those mental health calls, like they can get real wild real quick.
Yeah, unpredictable. I mean,
yeah, I think. Last episode we were talking about, well, we talked about a few different crazy things, but I had mentioned like my first call with the PD where we had a female that had a gun at a laundromat and was causing a scene there.
Mm-hmm.
That was another like semi mental health crisis thing.
Right.
But,
I think over 50% of our work is mental health. I mean, if you take drugs
Mm-hmm.
and mental issues out of the equation,
what
are we going to just drive around all day? I mean, there's nothing for us to do. I guess catch some speeders.
Yeah. There's so much crime that I don't know what the actual stat breakdown is, but I would like to know. I'll probably look it up after this episode, but there's so much crime that is spurred on, kind of fueled by narcotics that, yeah, you'll have a lot
of mental health too, I would say, because people seem to get stuck that way. They once they've, especially with meth, they've done it long enough where, some of them doesn't do it too, and others it does, but some of them are, even though when they get off of it, they just, they have this, they're just stuck.
Yeah. Well, and that's the weird thing too, is like, you'll have people who like, they were born with some kind of mental illness where they're really, really struggle with bipolar or schizophrenia or whatever. But then you do almost have like
chemically induced.
Yeah, like people fry their brains on meth and like now they're schizophrenic, but like they weren't like that before meth. But yeah, they become just kind of frequent flyers.
It's really sad because you see it ruin. These are normal people that at some point made some bad decisions and got on dope, and then a certain percentage of those people just get stuck that way, even when they get off of it. And it's
totally different people.
Yeah, and the mental health system doesn't. The hospitals don't really want them because they've abused narcotics, and so they don't want to take them. And jail's really not a place for them a lot of times. And then they're kind of in this gray area of what do you do with these people?
Yeah, exactly. I don't know. It'll be interesting to see in the next several years, kind of how the relationship between law enforcement and the mental health field continues to evolve. Because, like you said, I mean, jail's not really always the right place for these folks. But now sometimes it is. Sometimes, just because you're suffering from a mental illness doesn't mean that you can commit serious felony crimes and just...
Yeah, it's not an excuse, but at the same time, it's
a very gray area.
Yeah,
so
it's situational. I mean, there's a lot that goes into it. It's not a very easy answer.
Yeah.
There's not, with a lot of law enforcement, there's not easy answers to any of it. People from the outside think that there is. Watching TV is, but it's not that easy.
It's not that easy. And I don't know about y'all, but have y'all noticed, because I know I've noticed, like, while I was working patrol and everything, whenever you interact with someone who's a very heavy meth user and they've been on it for a few years at least, have you guys noticed that one, that they kind of start to develop these mental illnesses where a lot of times like they'll tell me that like they're hearing voices and stuff like that, and they'll do that, but they also get like super paranoid where like they think that people are following them, and they think that like a guy told me one time that the government was shooting lasers up into the sky at a satellite, and it was coming down and it was beaming into him and controlling his mind. And he legitimately believed this, and he had actually called 911, and I show up and he wants me to get the government to stop controlling his mind.
Yeah, I've been similar calls where they would look at and you'd see one of the, I don't know, Jupiter, one of the planets, would be brighter that time of year, that time of month, and they thought that was a government satellite that was, he's like, I know that's yours. I'm like, what's mine? He's like, that up there. He goes, I know that's what you used to listen to me. I'm like, bro, like,
I never even
if we had that capability, I promise we wouldn't be spending it on you. Some guy run around just using user meth and stealing, copper out of trash cans or whatever the issue was with him.
Yeah, I mean, they truly believe it, and they fear for their lives.
Oh yeah, because to them it's as real as we are sitting here, and that's this is a very powerful thing when you believe something to be true that's not.
Well, and like,
you act on it.
I've been to situations before too that were really dangerous because it was like this guy he's a heavy meth user. He's developed this extreme sense of paranoia, and then we get a 911 call from like Walmart parking lot. Someone saying like, "Hey, there's this like wacky dude in the Walmart parking lot, and he's like screaming at people, and he's telling people to stop following him, and he has a knife, that type of thing." So you show up to address this, and that dude, like, he's in such a paranoid, panic state that, like, when you go to interact with him, you can try and de-escalate him and get him to see reason and, try and help him out. But more often than not, you're not really going to be able to reason with them when they're in that manic state. And so some kind of force is going to have to be used. And when they're in that state, they are going to fight with every fiber of their being to get away from you or to harm you or someone else.
Because in their mind, they're fighting whatever enemy that they think is trying to attack them. I mean, they
fight or flight mode at that point. You know.
Yeah, we fought a guy one time that this is around the holidays, but have you ever heard of like Krampus? You know what that is?
Yeah, I don't. Krampus.
Okay. Krampus is like, I don't know what country it comes from, but you know, like different countries around the world when they celebrate Christmas, they do Santa Claus or Saint Nicholas, whatever. Well, I don't know where it comes from, but some country has a thing. It's like the opposite of Santa Claus. Essentially, it's an evil thing called Krampus.
It's like a monster, yeah.
Yeah,
really.
Yeah, if you're a bad kid, then
Krampus comes to see you.
Krampus comes to get you. But this dude, like, he was hallucinating real bad when we were dealing with him, and he was calling us Krampus like the whole time that we were fighting him. But he thought that the cops who were trying to restrain him were like demons attacking him, and he fought hard. Like, he fought real hard.
What? They get like superhuman strength.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Well,
they don't feel pain.
Yeah. They're naked a lot of times too, right?
That's what I remember. I remember a female that we used to always deal with.
Yeah.
And she was notorious for getting naked, and then she would go into random people's houses.
All the time. Yeah, that's right. Like, and get in the shower.
Yes.
How'd she get in there? Like,
the front door would be open. Then she was watching TV, and she'd walk in their house.
Oh, so like
go
she
get in the shower,
find an open door.
And as soon as you found this girl, it was fight on every time. And she was tiny. I mean, she probably weighed 120. Was just super tiny girl, but it was a fight every time. It'd take two people for sure to get her under without hurting her real bad. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I mean, there was one time I was training a rookie, and we were patrolling on it was midnights. It was like 3 o'clock in the morning or something like that. Nobody out.
Yeah.
Weekday, so we're like not looking for you didn't think you'd see a bunch of stuff going on or whatever.
Yeah.
We turn this corner and there is a bird bath in this lady's yard. Well, there's this naked woman on the bird bath like a bird. She's perched on the bird bath. And we're like, holy shit, what is this?
Like, what is going on here?
And so we get out and it's that same girl. And we're like, here we go.
Yep.
And there we go. The fight was on.
Yep.
And it's fight with her, get her to the hospital, fight with her at the hospital.
Yep.
It's never ending.
Well, it's another sad story because she had before she got bad off on dope, she had a good job.
Really?
Do you know where she worked? We won't get into that, but she had a good job and basically a normal life and just, again, bad life choices and got into that meth. And it ruined her. But she was working at a place that was she could have had a good career out of it.
Right.
Which there's a lot of stories like that with people like that. But she,
I think she had a husband, and
I don't
remember if she had kids, but I know I think she was married. She's a pretty girl.
Really?
Yeah. And just got a hold of her, It got
it's
got its hooks in you and it won't let go. So
yeah. I remember I arrested a guy one time that we arrested him for public intox. He was basically walking out in the middle of the road and acting crazy and had his shirt off, and he was actually covered in blood because as he was walking around the road, he kept tripping and falling and cutting himself up. But he was on meth, and I interacted with him later on, and he actually wasn't from around this area. He was just kind of passing through, but he had been on meth for a long time. But he told me he used to trade stocks and stuff. Like, he used to be super successful. He was making a lot of money and going to all these parties and everything, and got hooked on dope and finds himself in small town Texas, walking around the middle of the road, getting arrested by the police. And so it takes all of you and it'll ruin you.
Yeah, nobody's immune to it. That's the thing. No. I mean, and you can come from a good upbringing, your parents did everything right, and you make a bad decision. It's not like we're doing some kind of anti-drug campaign, but I mean, you make some kind of bad decision and your life has changed forever. You were trading stocks and now you're, I don't know, some rural area of Texas getting into trouble.
Passed out by a dumpster behind a Taco Bell somewhere, but so it's a crazy thing. But I've noticed that. I've noticed like heavy drug users, like they hear the voices they say and they get real paranoid. They get naked a lot. That's another big one.
Because they're hot, they sweat. They're usually real sweaty and wet when you try to grab onto them.
Yeah, that's the thing is when you do go to like put hands on them and it's time to go in cuffs, they're super slick usually, and it's so gross.
But they're all it's the same. Yeah, I mean every time.
That reminds me of one that the same type of situation. We had a dude high on meth causing a problem. But when we went to deal with him, it was actually like pouring rain outside. It was like pouring buckets, and he had been walking around in the rain, and he had actually gone to the local landfill office where in our county we work in, and was causing a scene out there, and ended up like throwing a chair through a window and was threatening to beat people up and all that, and went out there and fighting with him. Like, he was super sweaty and nasty, slick, and then it was super rainy and wet that day, and so he was a tricky one.
But. Is that the landfill that's 10, 12 miles outside of the city limits?
This one is one that's like south of city limits. Oh. Yeah, because I remember this is back whenever I was with PD, and then if you talk to the guy who was my sergeant at the time, he'll tell this story, a different version of this story that makes me look bad, because we had like basically a dog pile of officers on this dude, and I have always maintained and will continue to maintain to this day that my sergeant told me, he said, Fithen, like, so we're fighting this dude like on the side of the road, but a lot of cars had stopped and were watching us like fight, and it was causing a traffic jam. So he tells me, like, Fithen, like, go get those cars out of here. So I go and I'm like directing traffic in the middle of the rain while this dude's getting an ass kicking behind me or whatever, but he still gives me hell about it. Like, oh yeah, like Fithen didn't even help us. Like, we had to fight this guy all by ourselves. I'm like, all right.
Is something he believes, or is he just giving you a hard time?
He's just giving me a hard time, but no, to this day, I maintain you're the one who told me to go direct traffic.
Well, that brings me to something I don't know. You would probably remember it. I don't know if you would, but when we first got body cams, I'd write my report, and with the introduction of body cams, I would review my video, and I would have things out of sequence. And I didn't realize it, but you watch those body cam, like you start to write your report, and you watch your body cam, and you think you did the, I sat down first, and turned out you sat down first. I'm just making something small, but in your mind, especially when something heavy is going on, sometimes you get things out of sequence. And I really noticed that when I started reviewing my body cams to write my reports. I'm like, man, I could swear that I did it like this, and then you watch the body cam, and some things are out of sequence, and it's just like.
You don't always remember everything.
No, I've been screwing these reports up for in my case, like 10, 12 years before, as far as some sequence, things, not that make a probable cause on it, of course.
Yeah.
Sequence of events can get, you just don't remember it correctly when heavy things are happening. You see it a different way.
I've noticed the same thing, like, with what I'm doing now in the detective world side of things, I do the same thing where, like, I can tell you, okay, so, I talked to this person and they told me this, and I talked to this person and they told me this, but I'll do that same thing where if I don't go back to my notes, I'll get it out of order with, like, who I talked to first. But, like, I can tell you what they told me, and I can kind of recall the facts, but sequence is hard to get down. So body cams are
you worked without body cams.
I did,
because we got ours in 2014.
Really?
When did you start
2000
working with them?
Oh, I don't remember when we first. I think probably 14 is when we got.
We were some of the first ones around to get them.
Yeah, they were ours. Y'all might have had them before us. Right. I can't remember, but these are the ones we had were super cheap, and they'd fly off, and I mean, it was hard to get used to.
Yeah. Well, see, I've had body cams since I started in law enforcement. They've always been a thing.
Yeah, you don't know what life was like without them.
No, I've never been a cop without a body cam.
Well, they're super. And there was a lot of resistance to them where I worked and where I still do. Because people just. No, they didn't want body cams in. The third day of me wearing one got me out of a jam because this guy he was a kind of a road rage / domestic situation out on the highway, and he had actually shot at a vehicle. Ooh. He's in a black Camaro with orange racing stripes. Very unique vehicle.
Yeah.
Well, we find one in the vicinity. We pull it over, to do felony stops. They're pulling out at gunpoint. Well, as they're moving around and starting to kind of get out of the car, I could tell that, like, hey, this is not the suspect. It was two females, and the suspect was a male.
Yeah.
And I'm like, this isn't the right car. I mean, it's a black Camaro with orange racing stripes, but this is not the right people. So there was troopers out with us and PD and SO units, and I waved them on, and I had a conversation with these people for, I can't remember how long it was, 7 minutes or 11 minutes. I explained to them in detail, like what was going on and why we did what we did, and why, because they were freaked out because they got pulled out at gunpoint and all that.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Felt everything was fine, and they ended up complaining on me, and the complaint was that they did this, pulled their guns on us, got us out of the car and all this stuff, and never explained why. Well, this is literally the third day I had that body cam. I could play it and be like, this is exactly what happened. And I spent, around 10 minutes explaining to him. I mean, the other guys went and searched for and found the suspect vehicle, and I didn't get to be involved in that till the end because I was explaining it to these people. But it saved my ass, because and you have your in-car camera, but it's not nearly as good as the body cam. You have audio issues if you get far enough away from your car and all that good stuff.
Our old dash cams, if you got out of a certain vicinity, you wouldn't hear anything on the
when you see people's face and reactions and stuff like that with the body cam because you're right there with them versus the dash cam that you can't see all of that. And we have both, but the body cam's much better. I think it's a great tool. It protects us.
It's definitely a good thing now, I think. I mean, it holds us accountable, which is what the public thinks I think that's what it's for, but it also holds them accountable.
Exactly.
For situations like that.
Yeah, it holds everyone accountable. Having never operated without one, I've never had a problem with body cam. I actually really like them. So if I'm going to deal with something that even might a little bit turn into something controversial, I want to record it.
Exactly. That's what I was a big. Well, I was the main guy that got the ball rolling to get ours at our department because I'm all about proving what we're doing and what we're doing is right. If you're not doing things right, you don't need to be in the business anyway. If you want to hide things, then you need to go do something else, not be a cop.
Yeah, if you have a problem wearing a body cam, then you shouldn't be hired on anywhere. I mean, if you're going to do the job right, then you should actually probably want to wear a body cam just for your own safety.
Right, for sure.
And I don't know if this is true. I heard that when they were having riots in those larger cities, the cops were wearing body cams, and then and they were seeing people misbehave and proving kind of how things were going on within these riots. Yeah. And that I can't remember, it might have been in Ferguson or St. Louis, somewhere like that. They told them, hey, when you're doing riot duty, don't have your body camera on.
Why?
I think because it was proven some things that were going on within the crowd that was politically wasn't I guess good for the protesters. I don't know.
Interesting.
I can't. I mean, we'd have to look that up and see. But I remember it was a news report. But I mean, just because you hear it in a news report doesn't mean it's true. I think we all know that.
But no, that's fact.
But it's so stupid. It sounds like it's probably true.
Yeah. Well, I could see that though, because I can't name specific cities. I have to look it up. But someone was telling me not too long ago about there was a big push in certain bigger cities for these officers need to be wearing body cams. They can't be trusted. They need to be recorded at all times. And these agencies got body cameras. They outfit all their officers with them. And now there's a big push because people aren't able to be found not guilty in their cases very often anymore because the cops have them on camera doing things.
They want to get rid of them.
And so now there's a big push on these body cameras are violating our privacy. I didn't consent to being recorded. That type of thing. And so make up your mind, pick your poison, So, but I don't know. I'm a big fan of them. I like the body cams.
Well, and another thing, the citizens don't realize is that the huge cost to it.
Yeah, they're expensive.
Super. Well, and it's the storage. Is super expensive.
Yeah.
I mean, you're having larger cities. It's hundreds of thousands of dollars just for storage a year.
Yeah. Well, the device itself is expensive because it's a pretty fancy portable little camera. But you're right. If you're gonna have, even at a smaller, more rural, I can't ever say that word, rural agency like ours, on the average, patrol shift, you're going to record probably at least a couple hours of video throughout your shift.
For sure.
If not, 4 or 5 hours of video. Mm-hmm. But that's every shift, and that's every deputy.
Well, we're doing, I can tell you, because I do that. That's part of what I do in my job now is the purchasing, and about $70,000 a year just on the storage for our in-car and body cameras together.
It's expensive.
And the hardware kind of gets paid off, and you have that core of the storage is where the
imagine for a major city how much that would be.
Well, it's got to be hundred. I imagine in the millions. Do the math. Big cities, super big cities.
It's got to be a lot. And that factors into a larger problem too of a law enforcement agency is no different than really any other government run entity or any other business where we have a budget to operate off of, but if a certain amount of your budget is going into body cams and video storage and everything, a lot of times that stuff's so expensive, you don't have a lot of funds to work with other things.
Well, yeah, other things suffer because we have to do that. I mean, one, it's mandated now, but two, even if it wasn't, we would continue to do it because it comes in so useful for us.
It's such a good tool that it's worth the money.
Yeah, it's worth the money, but other things do suffer because you can't there's not an unlimited supply of taxpayer money to fund law enforcement, and you've got to figure out what's the most important. And sometimes there's more important things than there is money.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, it's wild. I think that creates an interesting environment for the modern cop, though, where I think our agency is very good about finding money for training that our deputies want to go to. And, you know, if you want to learn something, you can find a school for it and you can get trained up. But I see a lot of officers at other agencies that are not as well funded, where they're really kind of having to spend their own money to go train.
Yeah, that's ridiculous. It's sad.
It really is. But I mean, you know, I know guys that they want to be really good interdiction officers and they want to get dope off the streets and everything. And they're putting in training requests to their agency like, hey, can I go to this interdiction school? Like, no, we can't afford it. So they're taking money out of their own pocket and they're going to these schools and they're doing so good on them.
Well, I think that shows the dedication of that. I think people don't see also in law enforcement is dedication of these guys to spend their own money. I think, you know, some dude working at a bank probably ain't going to send himself to some kind of finance, you know, some 3-day finance school on his own. The bank's going to pay for him. It's just expected.
Well, and that goes for a lot of public service jobs because I know like in education and teaching, which my wife is involved in teaching. And I mean, I know, you know, a lot of teachers spend their own money on school supplies for kids,
you know, decorating their classrooms,
classrooms, like any number of things. But
isn't that weird? Some of the most important jobs out there, educator, law enforcement. I'm sure there's guys in the fire service, we give them hell, but I'm sure there's guys in the fire service that probably send themselves to schools and that where their department isn't paying for it.
Yeah, I guarantee it. But
and then there's the other things, like I'd pick on a banking industry. There's other, most of the private sector probably sends their people, but the public servants are the ones having to spend their own money. And sometimes it's really sad, actually.
Yeah, it does get really sad. That's the other, kind of going back to what you were talking about when we started talking about this is it paraplegic? We were talking about this before we started recording. Paraplegic, midget call. Quadriplegic.
Quadriplegic, yeah.
Quad, yeah, that. But going back to that.
No legs.
No legs. Well, you were saying, like, y'all got there and, like, I mean, you barely had any SWAT experience at that time, but...
I had a little more by that time. I can't remember exactly what year it was, but I'd had a little more at that time.
Okay. Well, what did y'all have in terms of, like, equipment? Because I know, like, our team now, our tactical team, has a few more toys at our disposal, but what did y'all have then? Like,
at that point, all we had was a 37 millimeter, which is a launcher. That's what we used to bust out the windows. We shot some ferret rounds through the window to get the windows out.
Yeah.
And outside of that, we had to call another agency in to get a drone just for some type of surveillance because we didn't have anything.
Was that back when the vests were
or
would you have the newer vest then, or because years ago when I was on it, and I think you were on at that time you were newer, but it basically essentially almost more like a bomb suit because they were so heavy.
We still had
school equipment, nobody was maintaining it.
Well, Well, that was another thing that goes into it. It's kind of off topic to what you just brought up, but you know, they tell me, hey, you're in charge of this, and you have a $5,000 budget to operate off of.
That's ridiculous.
That's not a lot.
Well, we need, like, we're running out of the 80s here. It's like, this stuff is, we have helmets that look like they came from Nam. We have these vests that make us look like Ninja Turtles. We can't.
And they were probably donated. I bet those helmets were some kind of military donation.
It was probably some kind of surplus.
It probably did come from Vietnam.
So, you know, we did the best with what we could. By that time, we had some guys from the sheriff's office that were on the team as well.
Yeah.
Now, not all of them came to that situation, but and that's a whole different story as to why that didn't happen.
Was I on it then when that was happening?
No, you weren't on it anymore, but
I was too old by that time.
But there was just certain leadership that wasn't. They didn't. They wanted. I was in charge of it.
Yeah.
But you can't do what you want. Type of deal.
Yeah. In the sense of building your team or equipping it properly, and that speaks to leaders that aren't exactly doing what and administrators, I should say, that aren't doing what they're supposed to be doing. making the department better, safer for the citizens. They're just like give you which is ridiculous, a $5,000 budget for a city with approximately 16,000 people in their that has a lot going on, major highways going through it, and they want to spend $5,000 to equip their team, and they haven't even branched out of this little circle to see what exactly is going on in the tactical world. And then eventually, when another department took that over, the SO, they sent us some guys to some schools, like some real good schools in these, and you can probably elaborate on it, but basically these teachers, these trainers are like, the hell are y'all? What the fuck are y'all from the 80s? Like, you had drop holsters, you had these bigger vests, all this stuff was super antiquated and slows mobility down and all this stuff. Well, because they kept everybody so cocooned up, nobody realized, because they're all a bunch of young, what I call kids on this team, not the administrators at the time. That's on them. Yeah. And I guarantee you there's a lot of agencies like that, and that's sad.
Well, yeah.
Everything's sad to me.
When we had finally because nobody had ever went through SWAT school at all. We finally get the green light to go to a SWAT school, and we're taking all of our old equipment with us, and you know how other cops are. I mean, you get especially a group of guys in the tactical world.
Yeah.
It's a big group of jocks, so everybody's sizing each other up. They're judging each. I mean, that's just how it is. You're judging everybody to the last day. And then
they never even should have been called SWAT either, because there's certain requirements to that. But that at the time, that agency, that's not even what it should have been called. Yeah, because they didn't meet the criteria to be a SWAT team, maybe ERT or these other things. The names changed.
Well, that's what we got questions asked about that. We're at the SWAT school with other actual SWAT teams. And they're like, what's up with your equipment? Why do you call yourself SWAT? Y'all don't have some of the stuff that you should.
Like you'll meet their requirements.
It was our guns, our lights, just our vests, our helmets, and finally it was embarrassing.
I'm sure.
Well, they didn't know that, and I wasn't in a position of leadership at that point, and it was these other people. I mean, and again, I want to talk about this because I know there's other agencies out there like that. And then it was embarrassing to you guys because you're there in front of these people and they're like, what the fuck's up with y'all? Instead of saying it's like, what the fuck is happening? No, what are you doing? It's screwing up.
I didn't know any better until I started going to these schools and talking to other people. I didn't know how bad it was. And, I started trying to change things and then ultimately stepped over to a different place, to the sheriff's office where I had more support. And I was able to do the things that needed to be done,
Needed changes.
But leaders and administrators always need to branch out and see what's going on, because you spend too long in an office and all of a sudden you don't realize they're not carrying drop holsters anymore. It's not 1991 anymore. Exactly. But people get stuck and, it's almost like they promote up, and whatever year they promoted, they never grow their career from that in the sense of like keep up with modernization or anything. They just stay like it's when they made, I don't know, lieutenant in 1993. They just keep it like that. And it's 2013, 20 years later.
Yeah.
And to them, nothing's changed.
Well, I see a lot of that. Like people that just kind of get stagnant as they climb the ladder. But I also see like kind of with what you're saying where and correct me if I'm wrong, but it sounds like they're basically asked you like, hey, we want you to take over this extremely important like leadership role. And we want you to go conduct very dangerous operations.
Right.
But we're not going to let you do it the way that you think it needs doing. Like, we're going to put you in harm's way, but we're going to decide.
We're not going to get you the equipment you need. We're not going to send you to the schools you need to go to. But, but we want you to do this.
And you're probably a bit green to be taking over such an undertaking anyway, but that speaks to the problems that some agencies have with they don't have enough personnel to do things, but they have a need for it. Like a ERT team or something. They have a need for some type of tactical team, but their agency's in turmoil or whatnot, and they're losing a lot of folks, and so they're putting a guy that's been on 4 years, in a command capacity, and then not sending him to the schools. It's just, I guarantee, it's just problematic,
Yeah, well, I mean, I had no business running any aspect of that team because I hadn't even got to be on it as an operator before they told me that I was in charge of it, like you're the boss of it now.
Hey, congratulations, you just
I hadn't even operated.
I don't know what I'm doing.
And that shows what smaller cities, smaller counties go through that. And you're talking population 16,000, 25,000. It's just unfortunately they get into those situations, but at the same time you still have all these high speed things we've talked about with a Midget with, shooting at officers or these other standoff situations we've had where we've had shots being fired and had to do things. Things still happen in smaller areas and need a capable, competent team. But sometimes leaders don't want to do what it takes to get that done and send people to proper training. Super important.
I had the aspirations for all of those things. I wanted our team to be the best that it could be. I just didn't get the cooperation that I needed for it. Once us as a group, it's real funny because when we've had our first call up, which it was for like a search warrant or something like that, man, we were like a bunch of little kids. I mean, me being the leader, I'd never been on one yet. And neither did any of the guys on the team. So I didn't know.
See, and I didn't even know this, man. I didn't know that because I was off of it because it was at the time it was what'd you call it? The multi-agency
joint task.
And then I got off. I didn't know you guys had all that turmoil, and I didn't know that. So y'all are running raids with nobody that had ever actually deployed before.
Our very first raid as a group was just we were all rookies
because all the other people had quit.
We never knocked on a door ever, or cleared a house or done anything. So me being the leader, I mean, I should be able to be like, okay, guys, I know you're excited, but you gotta calm down. We gotta.
Yeah.
No, I'm with them. I'm jumping up and down. Like, couldn't sleep the night before because that's how excited you are for this deal, but you're also nervous because crap. I gotta put together this ops plan and decide what order the stack's going to be in, like where I'm going to put perimeter units, and like I don't know what I'm doing.
Yeah, well,
now I want to ask you: do you think that if again, because I wasn't involved and you were at another agency at that time, but do you think that if something bigger would happen, maybe a guy that was a barricaded subject with a gun at that time, do you think they would have called a surrounding team to come in on something like that?
I think so. I don't think they would have used us for. I mean, there was times where we felt like we should have been called up and they didn't, or they would, handle it with one or two of us or something like that. I mean, we'd had situations where we deployed gas and they put this team on standby, but nobody would show up.
Well, who's deploying gas?
Somebody else that's
see that gets involved.
That was the deal. Only one person was allowed to do that, and he had access to all. It was all under lock and key, and he was the only one that could do it.
Yeah,
and he was the ultimate deciding factor on whether it was deployed or not. So if he was out of town or wherever,
then I guess you lose that capability.
We had no, in which at that time we called ourselves SWAT, but we had no special weapons or tactics. So
we were at the state mandated training to be called that type of a team.
We were just this group of guys that trained every 2 weeks and did the best we could because I didn't know what to do for training. I would show up and we'd get a school and we'd start clearing it like we thought we were doing it right, the best we could.
Well, and I mean, even so, like not having all the training or equipment that you really ought to have, like it doesn't matter how big your jurisdiction is, like you're going to get those situations where, hey, this started as a domestic call, like you got husband beating on wife and patrol showed up and the patrol officer started dealing with it. And then next thing you know, this dude fired an AR-15 at the patrol guys and they've backed out of the house now and he's barricaded in there. He has a hostage. Like this is a SWAT situation and this is what you're going to be called to deal with. And, you may not have the tools that you need for that. But nonetheless, it's not like you can just leave and be like, well, sorry, lady.
No, you got to do something. You
got to do what you can. So
especially in our area, we don't have the luxury of having somebody that close. And
it's commendable that you guys stepped up because everybody, I mean, the whole people with experience had all quit.
Yeah.
But because there's issues,
Yeah.
Which we're not start just beat up on one agency or anything, but there's issues and everyone left and they brought unbeknownst to me, they brought a completely new, fresh group of guys that had no experience. I didn't know that.
Well, that's what had happened is I got to go to, it was my first, I did have one class that I went to and I went to our hard entry school with another officer, and how I ended up being the team leader after that was one of the instructors was our chief's his brother-in-law, and he had put a call into the chief and said, hey, this Fisher guy did pretty good, maybe
And he knew they were rebuilding the team and looking for leaders and stuff like that.
He's like, I think he'd be a good one. And so that's Chief was like, you're the guy. They said you did good. So
okay.
Like, okay, here we go.
Well, I guess, and to be fair, what's that Chief going to do when he has 6, 7, or 8 or whatever, however many, basically newer guys to a team like that?
Yeah.
Other than take what these guys at this training are saying, hey, these guys kind of stood out amongst those 8 people.
And it's not even the same team now at all. I'm the only original person, one.
Really?
A lot of them moved on. One of them's in prison. I mean, so that's just.
Yeah. Yeah, how ironic.
Yeah.
Yeah,
but it's a whole lot more structured now with meeting criteria to be trained and with equipment and all that. I mean, it's really over the last several years been built up to what it needs to be.
Yeah. And we took a more of a more stance on being more physically fit because at that time there was no standards. We called them standard. We had a test that they had to take. Well, even if they didn't pass the test, they got on the team. So what was the point of doing the test?
And that was another administrative decision.
And that was an administrative decision. We're like, well, he tried hard, or we don't have anybody else, so let's just go ahead and put him on the team. Well, sorry. It's like going to try out for baseball and you suck, but they're going to let you. What's the point of trying out?
Because there's not enough players, so we're going to have this kid. Right. We don't have any pitchers, so I don't know. I get that he can't throw with the shit, but we're going to have to put him in there.
The thing is, though, we're playing a very dangerous game.
Yeah, it's not baseball. It's like, hey, this guy can make a poor decision and do something when he's not supposed to, or not do something when he should and get himself killed. I mean, it's a big deal.
We're not doing the thing where, hey, we're gonna play hard, and even if we lose, we're still gonna go get ice cream later. This is not that type of thing.
But again, in smaller town USA, I can guarantee you there's similar stories all throughout the country where people have similar type situations, especially when you have some poor leadership mixed in there, and then just the I guess transient nature of smaller town, law enforcement. I would say 10 to 25,000 people. That's all pretty small town. I mean, you get 2,000 people. Well, you probably aren't going to have a team like that. But towns 10,000 or more, I'm sure they probably have some variation of teams.
Something. Well, and one thing that's cool to see, at least where we are now, is I wasn't there when the whole thing started. That was before my time, but seeing where our current agency's tactical team is at now, it sounds like it's made leaps and bounds of improvement. And I know that, you guys have even been called by other jurisdictions for some kind of mutual aid request.
Right, where we serve an area, I would say that,
But it's cool to see it go from like, hey, this is kind of just a hodgepodge ragtag group with no standards to being a very squared away team that like other counties are calling saying, hey, we have quite the situation here. Can y'all come and conduct these operations?
So. Oh, yeah. I mean, it's a complete turn from what we used to have.
Well, do you think your early days in that was seeing it done wrong and then knowing you didn't have enough training and the guys didn't? Do you think that probably made you a better leader on that team because you're like, hey, I know that this is not how you do it, so I know that when I'm making decisions, I'm going to do this?
Well, yeah. I mean, I went through, so many ups and downs with it that it was, I had to push through a lot of things because I was always the constant, and I knew that I wasn't going to get off of it, At that time I was committed, to, whether the guy beside me was on it next week, I didn't know, but I was going to be there. So,
exactly.
But, once we finally started getting, you can just see it different in the mindset now that the type of people that we're getting on these teams now, that it's just not only the physical fitness part of it, but just your camaraderie. That's just like there's a whole different type of trust that I have in my guys now than I did back then. Not that I didn't trust those guys, because most of them some of them we still work with on patrol now and again, or some of them might be in prison, so I don't necessarily trust that guy. But I trusted him. There's a difference between a patrol trust and when you're entering a house, some kind of situation kind of trust.
Yeah,
and that's what we have now. And I would gladly take these guys to any kind of any battle.
Yeah, which is awesome because we all know that we can get called to any sort of like super nasty situation where, you could be going into that house knowing that the likelihood that you're about to get into a very close quarters gunfight is very high. And so you want to go in there with people who you trust and not like, hey, when the shooting starts, like, is this dude going to bail on me or?
Well, now, I mean, those situations are on the rise. I mean, it's, me and Brandon just, we topped up a sheet the other day that had, wouldn't call it statistics, but it's kind of statistics. I mean, it just shows an increase from last year to this year of how many tactical
SWAT deployments or
I'll call them tactical situations or something that the team was
essentially ERT call outs. It was it had grown by about 40-50% over the last year.
Yeah,
when I'd started, when we put this team together, we were nothing but a warrant service team. We call ourselves SWAT, but
we never
went out on anything, any other type of SWAT call out.
Well, right, yeah, and those types of operations though can still be highly dangerous because
definitely,
you've got your patrol guys or some guys working narcotics, and they're like, hey, we have been conducting investigations, and we've established probable cause. We've got these facts and circumstances that tell us that these 4 guys in this house, they've got guns, they've got dope, they've got whatever that they're not supposed to have, and they get a search warrant to hit that. But that is a very, very tactical team necessary type of situation, because if you're going to go up against potentially 4 armed and dangerous felons, then and I guess to clarify, law enforcement tactical teams I think have an obvious operational difference between the law enforcement and the military have a difference, because you can't go in there with the mindset of like, we're going to hit this house, we're going to kill everyone in there.
Right.
You actually want to do the opposite of that. Like, we would like to take everyone out of there alive.
Well, that's what we've talked to. Well, we used to have a guy on the team that was former Army.
Yeah.
And he said a situation like this is way different, because we would always kind of lean on him. Well, how'd y'all do in the Army? He's like, no, you got it wrong. He's like, what we did in the Army is not like what we did here. Because if we were going to clear this room and we knew there was bad guys in there, we would just throw a grenade in there. We're not going in there to have a gunfight with them. We'll just blow them up. We have to go in there. Yeah. So, that's the difference.
And that's a big misconception, again, that admin, some administrators have, is that, hey, this guy was, he has prior Army, he has prior Marines. Right. Let's stick him on the team. And hey, he may have great tactics, but that guy's got to realize that the mission is completely different. Because, you're going in there. I mean, if you're in Afghanistan, I mean, the mission is to go in there and clear this whatever, these little apartment things they have over there well, you're killing people. I mean, you're going in there, you're eliminating the enemy is what you're doing. Yeah, well, we don't do that as cops. We don't eliminate the enemy unless the enemy is trying to eliminate us, or it appears that they're trying to eliminate us.
Yeah.
Right? So the tactics are completely different.
Yeah, the standard for that lethal force is way different.
Rules of engagement are totally,
we operate on last resort lethal force, and, they're getting to operate on, I mean, they have a standard there where, depending on certain factors, they can kill dudes in their sleep, so.
Exactly.
Which in prior military, but Marines and Army guys is super great to have on a tactical team. But the point we're trying to make is those two jobs are entirely different. What you do in the military versus what you do in cop land.
Yeah,
I mean, they're totally different missions.
Yeah, well, I mean, it is most people think that just because you're we don't have anybody on our TAC team with prior military at all.
Yeah,
and that would surprise a lot of people, because they would think, well, I mean, to be on some kind of team like that, you got to have some kind of military
I don't feel like
background.
we're getting as many, even just general applications in law. We used to, call it 10 years ago, we were getting more applicants that have military experience, but now, we can't get applicants, period, anywhere. Nobody can, even these bigger agencies. Yeah. But and it seems like fewer and fewer military folks are wanting to get into law enforcement.
And that's almost what I did whenever I got because I told y'all before that I wanted to, I always wanted to be a cop. Well, we graduated high school. I was like, how am I gonna kill 4 years before I turn 21? Because I was like, college ain't for me. Like, I know I can't go to college. I was like, I got to do something.
Yeah.
So in my senior year, I was thinking about all that, and me and my best friend were like, hey, let's join the Army.
Yeah.
And we're like, oh yeah, that's a good idea. So we hit up these recruiters, and of course they're like, yeah, come on down. And so we start talking to them, and they're like, what do you think you want to do? And I'm like, well, I think I want to be a cop, so I want to be an MP.
Yeah.
And they're like, no. You don't want to. You don't.
You don't want to do that.
You don't want to be an MP. Everybody in the military hates the MPs. You don't want to be hated. I'm like, okay, well, I was like, my cousin's he's a tanker. He's currently in. I was like, I want to be a tanker then. And they're like, that's a good choice. Well, you can do that. And my friend, he chose infantry.
Yeah.
And so we basically verbally committed to these guys. We're like, hey, this is what we're doing. So
this is what we're gonna do.
We took the ASVAB, passed all that stuff, and so they'd randomly come and get us out of school at senior year. You'd see them at the window of your being English class, and they'd knock on the window like, "Can I get a Mr. Fisher, please?" And the teacher would be like, "Yeah," and they had to let them go. They had to let us go. They had no choice.
Yeah.
So they'd just come get us out of school for no reason, and we just go hang out with them. Okay. I guess just to make us comfortable. And I'm like, this is great. Like,
this is awesome.
This is the best decision I've ever made in my life.
Yeah.
Well, they're playing. They're politicians. They're playing a game to get you to sign that paper.
I'm like, I'm going to get this bonus. I'm going to do all these cool things. And, but one of my recruiter, he was like, hey, there's going to be one hiccup because back then I was a bigger boy. I weighed probably 240 to 250 at that time.
Okay.
I was always I was fit, athletic. I played sports, but I was chunky. Mm-hmm. And they were like, you're probably gonna be over the body fat percentage that they require. Yeah. So you're probably gonna end up having to cut some weight. And I'm like, okay, that's fine. He's like, but we got a plan. We'll get it figured out. So the time comes to where we have to go to MEPS. You know what MEPS is? Yeah. So they haul us over and they're like, okay, we're gonna go to Walmart. We're gonna send you in. You need to get a box of Saran wrap, a tube of Preparation H, and a bottle of magnesium nitrate. Okay. I'm like, okay. And I had to pay for this out of my pocket. Go in there.
The government wouldn't pay for it?
I don't know. No. Bummer. So they're just waiting out in the parking lot. I go into Walmart, buy this stuff. I'm like, okay, I got it. And I'm like, all right, let's go to the hotel. Yeah. Go to the hotel, and I have to strip down into my shirt or no shirt.
I feel like he's fishing to confess. Is this no crime? No crime. You're going to confide something with us.
This happened in a different jurisdiction.
No crimes. But so recruiter starts rubbing Preparation H all over my belly. And he's like, this is going to make you cut inches overnight. And I'm like, okay.
Is it though?
So he puts this stuff all over me, wraps me in Saran wrap real tight. And I'm like, it's hard to, it's like, this is uncomfortable. And they're like, you need to drink that whole bottle of magnesium nitrate. And if you're not familiar with what that does to you, I mean, I shit all night long wearing Saran wrap Preparation H. And I get the wake up call because they wake you up at like 5 a.m. They're like, hey, it's time to go to MEPS. Yeah. So I go downstairs and there's all these other dudes down there from all different, they're going to Coast Guard or Marines. There's all different branches down there. Yeah. They're all down there eating their, pancakes or waffles, whatever the hotel had, and having a good old time hooping and hollering. And I'm miserable. They're like, you can't eat in the morning. Do not eat.
No breakfast.
Okay. And I couldn't eat supper that night before either. I'm like, all right. So we get on the bus, go to MEPS, and sure enough, I go through all the stuff. Everything's going great. Well, they get to the point where they measure my body fat, and they're like, yeah, you're over. So you're going to have to do the step test. Oh. And by that time, I was so miserable, and I had a lot of time to think because I didn't sleep. I was like, I think I jumped into this way too fast. I did not think about this very much. So I remember going outside. I was like, can I have a little bit? And they're like, yeah. So I go outside and I call my dad and I'm like, I don't know if I made the right decision here. I'm not liking this anymore. Yeah. And he's like, if you're not comfortable, don't do it. This is the time to,
Well, yeah, you're bumping up against that, like, no turning back.
Right. Yeah, because I would have passed they were going to make me do a step test. And you'd step up and down on this box and they, check your heart rate, make sure you're good to go. And then they overlook the body fat deal. Sure. And so as soon as I passed that, it's swear-in time. Yeah. And then you finish your senior year and then you ship out or whatever.
Yeah, you're committed.
And so, I talked to my dad and he was like, yeah. And he's like, you need to do it now if you don't want to do it. And I'm like, yeah, I don't think I want to do it. So I go and tell the people that were at MEPS, I was like, you know what? I said, I don't think I want to go through this anymore. Yeah. And they were like, okay, we'll call your recruiter. So they call the recruiter and he shows up, does not say a word. And
super pissed.
Picks me up. Oh, he's mad. I mean, he's real mad. He immediately goes to Rose's Cafe and gets like 8 bean burritos, and I'm still starving. I hadn't eaten still. You know, big boy wanted to eat.
Still a hungry man.
And he gets 8 bean burritos. Doesn't ask if I want anything. He still hadn't said a word, and he just sits there the whole drive from A to B, smacking on these burritos, staring out the road.
All right.
That's when I was like, I made the right decision on this.
Don't they get bonuses or something for people they sign up? Which, I mean, you got to give them incentives, so I'm not knocking that, but I'm just saying they get some kind of...
Yeah, they get some kind of, you know, like a commission off of it.
Okay.
You know, and I don't blame him for being mad, but also, you know, I was like, I got to think about me here a little bit, you know, and, you know, they, you know, painted everything to be rainbows and butterflies.
Oh, I'm sure they did.
My buddy, which we didn't get to see each other. We went at the same time, but they kind of like separated us, and I had no idea where he went. I don't know if they separated us by like what we were going to do in the like in the Army, like because he was chose infantry, he went to a different side, or I don't know, but he went through with it, and he didn't even know that I had left until he called me later, and he was like, hey, so how'd your swearing go? I was like, I didn't do it. He's like, what? You know, he wasn't mad at me. He's like, well, I guess I'm going to the Army.
Oh, okay.
So he ended up going.
How did he do? I'm sure he had success because it is good for a lot of people. I mean, it's a very positive thing.
He went and did, you know, he ended up in Iraq. They didn't, by that time, because that was, you know, 08, 09, everything in Iraq, it was, you know, pre-ISIS, but, you know, post, you know,
it's kind of
the
a
war.
Storm.
So it was just kind of, they were just kind of there. Didn't do much. He was miserable. He was like, he'd call me every so often, and he'd be like, as soon as I get my 4 years, I'm out.
Yeah.
He said, I'm done. And so that's what he did. So.
That's crazy. Well, I guess the experience with the recruiter was not really the best.
No.
Well, I think it probably, if you hadn't had to wrap yourself in saran wrap and cover yourself in Preparation H or whatever, had all that not happened, you might have went ahead and went into it. You just had a bad experience too with these guys. And they were probably so focused on just trying to get you to cut that weight and all that, they didn't think about maybe settling a little bit better, or maybe you needed another 6 months or something to work out and then cut that weight. They were kind of...
Yeah, because I mean, it's fast. Once you tell these guys, you're like, hey, I'm interested. It's like, okay, let's go. Let's keep going through it.
Sign this. Look at this. Do this. Yeah.
So that's what we fell into, and
you
know, the money caught our eye.
Oh yeah, I'm sure. Yeah.
You know, and I was already with my now wife at that time too, and you know, I was like, I'm gonna take. You know, you can move with us. You know, wherever I end up stationed, you move in. They'll take care of us, whatever. And,
it'll be awesome.
Yeah, and she never liked the idea either. So, but yeah.
It was probably for the best then.
Hey, can I go back? Because I'm sure people are wondering, because you mentioned it twice about the guy going to prison, which that was a national news story. And it was, we want to say that it wasn't anything on an ERT team or any law enforcement involved thing. But elaborate a little bit about that guy, which a lot of people already know him.
I guess I kind of left that out. Yeah. Well, I'm going to go ahead and say his name because it's out there.
I mean, he's in prison now where he should be.
If you're curious, you can look it up on Dateline.
There's
a great Dateline episode about it. But Timothy Dean.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he was a sergeant at the police department while I was there. He's actually an officer when I first started, but, you know, he made his way up the ranks.
Sure.
He was always kind of a quiet guy, but never expecting him to be a murderer. But yeah, I mean, he ended up being when he got off of the SWAT team at that time, he had taken a chief of police position in a real small town, and that's where it all went downhill, I guess.
Yeah.
He had some issues with, I'm not too, let me think about that. He, was it his, what was it? Who did he kill? He killed 2 people.
Yeah, he killed 2 people. It was his current, I don't know if they ever got married, but it was his current girlfriend, fiance, wife, whatever you want to call her. It was the father of her children.
Okay,
and
so
his
her ex.
and his wife.
Okay.
He killed them 2 in New York. He drove all the way to New York
from Texas.
Yeah. Overnight.
Had a wreck on the way up there. Right. And rented a different car.
Yep.
I think that was God telling him, hey, it's probably not a good idea to go out here and kill these people. He's like, nah, I'm fine. And he keeps going, basically.
Yeah. It ended up, it was very brutal. I mean, he walked up.
Killed in front of their child.
Their child's in the car. He walks up and he shoots both of them point blank. And then just leaves, drives back to Texas.
And he was working for free. He wasn't even a cop at that time. He was working for a potato chip company, I'll say. I don't know if it matters.
Working for I
mean, of course, they had nothing to do with it either. But I mean, he wasn't a cop anymore. He had some issues and got fired.
Well, there was a video of him slapping his young daughter. And I don't remember how old she was at the time, but it was. And I actually saw the video whenever it was under investigation with. When I was a detective at the police department.
Yeah.
The Texas Rangers were investigating him, and they had brought in, and they were kind of.
So he did that when he was with the PD that you worked at,
right?
He did the child abuse,
yes,
and then he got fired for it,
yes.
So he was terminated before he became a murderer,
right?
Did he have any charges? So what happened with those charges? How come he wasn't in jail for that, or was it still pending in court? Because it's a matter of months.
I think that was all still pending.
Okay,
and CPS had taken away her children because. Okay. They were all living together.
Okay.
So CPS took her kids away and gave them to the dad in New York.
And that's where
he was, and I don't know for sure, but I think he was thinking, well, I messed this up, so I'm going to fix it for you.
Yeah.
And so they came up with this plan that he was going to go murder them, and then they'd have no choice but to give the kids back.
Because they took the kids away because of him, because of his child abuse to his own kid. But he's hooked up with this girl, and she has her kids, and they take her kids away because she's with Tim Dean to give them to this guy. And so he drives his ass up to New York and kills him a few months later.
Yep.
While his child abuse charges are pending in Texas.
Right.
But he's already been fired from the PD.
Yeah.
That's so crazy. That was all before my time in the law enforcement world.
Did you know about it before you came up here?
I heard about that, but I didn't really realize kind of where that all happened. Because I remember hearing about this former chief of police somewhere was involved in this murder scandal, but it wasn't until I actually got involved at my first agency up here where I realized that happened in this area, that's where he used to be a cop, and so that was really interesting to me. But I'm with you, because correct me if I'm wrong, but on his way up to New York from Texas, he hit a deer? Is that
no? He was trying to do it. I guess he got lost or something. He was trying to do a U-turn and fell off into a ditch or hit a culvert and got stuck.
Okay. Yeah.
And then I think it was in Kansas.
Yeah, it was in Kansas.
Yeah. And then a sheriff's deputy pulls up on him.
Checks on him.
Right.
He knew, and the deputy knew something was up because he was throwing off some indicators. Tim Dean was some criminal indicators that all his cops are trained to look for. Now he had no idea what exactly he was doing, but he knew he was up to no good. But he just couldn't. He was. Cause I watched the body cam because they played it on the news.
Yeah. Well, see, that's crazy to me because I'm with you. Okay, you're on your way across multiple states to go commit a double homicide, and then that should be. If you didn't have any other wake-up call, that should be it. You had this little thing that happened on the side of the road.
We'll call it divine intervention.
Hey,
U-turn, screwed up, hit a culvert.
And now he's been identified by local law enforcement there who checks out with him.
And I'm sure he could tell that cop was
onto him.
Well, yeah, was onto him. I mean, maybe not. He knew he was going to murder people in New York, but onto him.
Knew something was going on.
Well, he had several weapons, like an AR.
And I think they saw him and a shotgun. And
really.
I think he might have had some body armor.
I think he did have some body armor. There's a story about it, on 2020 or Dateline or something.
Yeah, I think there is a 2020 episode on it. So
it's Dateline. There's a whole Dateline episode.
And it shows that body cam video of that deputy up in Kansas. It shows his interaction with Dean.
That's so crazy though. If ever there was a chance, a sign to turn around and don't do this, that was it. It had to have been right there. But that's so crazy.
Yeah, it was. That was. And you don't want to be put on the map by our area, be put on the map by that.
No.
But it is public knowledge.
But it also shows you that law enforcement investigates and goes after their own, and which they should.
Yeah.
His ass should have been fired and was from the PD when he got in trouble for that child abuse. And then obviously all I did was block the streets. But when they had that SWAT team from Austin come up, DPS SWAT team came and did that raid on his house to take him into custody. And they drove that, I think, Bearcat through his fence, and I mean, it was a real aggressive takedown. But we thought that he was probably going to step outside or just kill himself, like commit suicide, or shoot it out. And he didn't either. He gave up, which is
they blew his doors off. They did an explosive breach on his door and blew the doors completely off. Yeah,
they were serious about it.
I'd probably recommend the same thing. I mean, I'm no expert, but I'm like, hey, this dude, like, he's a trained cop and everything, and if he knows that he's pretty much dead to rights, like this. Well,
he killed two people. He has law enforcement training. Those are tactics. We even hit it. I say we. I was a perimeter guy on the road. But they hit it at a different time than we normally serve search warrants because. I mean, the thinking was, hey, if he thinks we might be coming, he's going to be ready around these hours, and so we hit it at a different time. Were you out there or anything on that?
No, we kind of kept our distance, just because, not that I had a personal connection with the guy, but we knew him,
of course, I knew who he was.
Kind of stay away from it, just cleaner that way.
Well, I remember the sheriff and chief deputy called me I came to work, and they called me into the office at like mid-morning or something. They're like, listen to this. And it was a voicemail from a news reporter in New York. Yeah. And she was asking about him. Just what we knew, I guess, because we're the sheriff's office in where those cities are at. Yeah. And I'm like, what the hell is she? We didn't know what she was talking about. Well, then we got to looking at it and figured out, like, wow. Oh. And then there's some things going on later that, I mean, they were tracking his phone and doing some stuff.
That's so crazy.
To try to, they could follow him. He had his damn phone with him. He's an idiot.
Yeah. You would think a cop of all people would know better. Yeah. With all the ways that you can track people.
I don't know that he necessarily... I don't think he was not trying to get caught. You know what I mean? I think he was just trying to get back home, and then whatever.
He's very reckless, I mean, obviously the dude's not right. I'm not saying he's a mental and doesn't need to be in prison, but he's an evil dude. Yeah. Anybody that would do that is evil. Oh yeah. He already had issues with his kid. He already displayed, some sociopathic type of behavior. Because I think anybody that whacks on their kid, other than like a regular spanking, has some issues. And damn sure somebody that drive up. Howard 24-hour drive to go kill two people and then do it has got some real issues. Need to be in prison.
Oh yeah, no doubt. It's a wild story. One thing you mentioned during that kind of reminded me. So the last episode we did, Jones and I we ended up doing kind of a brief walkthrough of like some of the cool assignments that we've got to do so far in our careers. And you mentioned whenever you were a detective for the city PD. Mm-hmm. I meant to ask you earlier and I forgot, but so you start as a patrol officer at the city PD.
Correct.
Walk us through like your assignments as like to where you've got now.
So worked patrol officer for, I don't know like the time frames on everything. So
that's whatever.
Worked my way up as a patrol officer, ended up being an FTO. Mm-hmm. Then I went into detective into CID, became a detective for a while. Mm-hmm. Then I got promoted to corporal and came back out of detectives and went back to the street. And that was another thing that I never got most corporals are not, the sergeant runs the shift. You have a corporal that kind of fills in first line top stuff, covers if the sergeant's not there or helps cover vacations, whatever. Yeah. Not me. It was, hey, Corporal Fisher, this is your shift now. Okay. So I was the sergeant, but getting corporal paid and at the corporal stripes. But
there was no sergeant?
I was the sergeant and no.
Really?
No sergeant at all. And that happened to several people.
Really?
That's kind of how being a corporal was over there. But that's, came out.
Yeah.
Got a shift. And then eventually they promoted me to sergeant.
Yeah.
Kept that shift for however long. And then I ended up going back into CID.
Okay.
After that. And then once I went to the sheriff's office I was working in CID at the PD when I went to the sheriff's office.
Okay. Gotcha. So you go to sheriff's office and then you're patrol deputy there?
Patrol deputy.
Okay.
For a little while and then patrol sergeant. And,
okay. That's
CID again.
Okay. That's one thing that I think, like a lot of friends I have that I talk to that they'll have a lot of questions about law enforcement or whatever, but one thing a lot of folks have questions about is like, hey, if you're a detective at like one agency and like you switch agencies, like can you just go be a detective somewhere else?
A lateral transfer.
Right. Yeah, I'm like generally no. Like I know sometimes like
yeah, I mean I'm sure some of these agencies do hire specifically for
Yeah.
Like I bet for school resource officers, stuff like that. That's you probably hire laterally for something like that.
And there are times I think where like you have a special assignment and then you can lateral to another agency to work that same assignment. But generally speaking, in my experience around this area, like you go to another agency, you're probably most likely going to get, hired on and assigned to the patrol division, and then you're going to spend some time there before you can specialize again.
Well, back to the tactical thing, and that's that whenever I left the PD and went to the sheriff's office, the team came with me. Like, control of the team, everything went to the sheriff's office.
Okay, yeah.
I mean, I think they saw the writing on the wall, but, it was going to be no more if it didn't go with us.
Well, and by that time, several members were on it because it was a multi-agency team. Right. Several members were on it. The majority of the members were on it.
It was
from the sheriff's office.
Yeah, at that time, I think it was probably it might have been half and half because we still had some guys there that are not there anymore that were on the team. But I was like the one that flipped it over to being majority sheriff's office. And there was 4, and then I made 5, and then they just kept funneling over.
Well, if the PD had 4, then you went over, then now they have 3, and then you've gained, so it,
That's a unique position, though, to be in, to where, like, hey, I'm going to swap agencies, but I'm going to still be in command of the same tactical team.
Right.
Like, I don't think that happens very often with...
Well, and it's hard for those multi-agency teams really to state it for that to continue on because there's differences in opinions from administration from one department to another, and they it's hard for them not to go south. Were you at school and somebody was telling you that also?
They were telling me, I can't remember what school it was, but they were asking about us being a multi-agency team, and they were just saying they weren't saying that ours would never work out, but they were like, a lot of times those don't work out just because what Jones just said.
Which makes
difference
sense.
In opinions, and
it makes perfect sense.
We run into that on call-ups. I mean, it's just
But again, with being smaller, I mean, we're the city's probably, I'm going to call it like 16,000 in the county, 25,000 total. I mean, those are decent numbers, but it's hard to have for any one entity to establish its own team by itself just because of personnel and you have newer people in there and trying to do it right. You want people with 2 years or more experience to even be able to try out for it, to set some requirements on it and to do that.
Yeah.
With these smaller departments, it's hard to meet those criteria unless you branch out to other agencies. Fisher, would you?
Right. Well, no, that's right. Yeah. But you can tell that we're slowly transitioning into it being primarily sheriff's office, and
that's.
Give it some time. I don't know if it may be solely sheriff's office again, and we're not a multi-agency team anymore.
We'll just have to see what happens.
I guess they would be right, but
I definitely see how it would happen. I mean, I can see where they come up with that idea. I mean, it's really easy to see how it'd just be like, well, you know what, we've got enough people. Let's just do it on our own. We don't have to worry about other folks, and they would think the same thing, I'm sure.
Yeah. This whole topic brings up another thing that. Like, I'll have people ask me a lot if I'm talking to any of my friends about what I do for a living. It's a lot of people, I think, have this perception of law enforcement as like cops are almost kind of like a hive mind where like every agency is kind of all the same, and like all the cops, like your city cops are kind of the same as your deputies, or the same as your state police, or the same as the feds, like, and that is not true at all.
No.
The leadership of these different agencies, like, you'll get a lot of different flavors of cops based on...
you have in different missions, the county, DPS, the troopers, highway patrol, whatever you want to call them, they've got a different mission. I mean, I guess your mission's the same, but it's different. I mean,
it's a different area of specialization.
Yeah, exactly. The troopers are on the highway, they're working EWIs, they're doing traffic, they have their specialized divisions, but, city cops and deputies are going to domestics and stuff like that, but there's a different... typically, sheriff's officers are just kind of friendlier to people. I mean, I guess probably throughout the U.S. I know in Texas, the sheriff's elected, and so there's that plays a part in the way we treat people. But I think law enforcement should treat people like sheriff's offices do as far as I mean, you need to be friendly to people until it's time not to. And just because somebody ran from you did whatever doesn't mean you're mad at them. We talked about that on the last show also. But you can be cool to people 90% of the time.
Yeah, well, and you run into like areas of specialization too, where like, hey, if like there's certain cops that are unique in and of themselves because they seek out specialized training, but like by and large, if you're looking for cops who are really, really good at interdiction on the highways, like those are going to be your state troopers. But like if you're looking for cops who are really, really good at like street level, like neighborhood dope crime, probably going to be your municipal city PD guys that really specialize in that. And then like at your sheriff's offices, like most cops have never dealt with a situation where it's like, hey, we have a barricaded subject with a gun in this house and we're going to have to resolve this with like 2 or 3 guys, you know, like it's all different.
Or you're going to be fighting a guy on the side of the road and it's going to be 15 minutes before your backup gets there, where in the city they're there in a minute and a half. You know, it's totally different. It doesn't matter how big and bad you are. You got to learn how to. That's probably another reason that sheriff's office, probably all around, have better verbal judo skills, because and I would say maybe even troopers do, because you're out there by yourself and you've got, it doesn't matter how much equipment you have or how strong you are. I mean, there's always somebody that's stronger and better, and you've got to be able to talk to people and try to talk them down and keep them calm. Till your backup gets there and you can arrest them. Because I've myself, I'm sure y'all have too, been out there where I knew a guy was going to jail, but I didn't even put him in cuffs yet. I'm just talking to him until my other people get there. Or we can deal with him then, because I don't need to. Why do this on the side of the road by myself when I can just talk to this dude, keep him cool until other people get there, you know?
Why push the situation?
There's no sense in doing that.
No.
Especially when you're out there on the highway by yourself. But really, if you're a minute away from backup, there's still no sense in just doing something until you need to.
And like anyone who's ever actually been in a fight before knows that, like, when you talk about like, oh man, I was out there by myself with this guy for 10 minutes, that doesn't really sound like a big deal unless you've been in a fight before and you're like, that is a long time to be fighting with someone on the side of the road.
Hey, there's a video out there. My son, he showed it to me, and I've seen it before, and I bet you guys have too. My son's actually fixing to start the police academy in about a month and a half. But it's a female that's in a house. It's a 2-story house, and I know you guys watch videos too. It'd be cool if we could like dissect this at some point.
Some point, we're gonna have some like body cam breakdown stuff,
because she is totally. She ends up shooting the guy's mother.
I think I've seen this.
And she's shooting at him.
Yeah.
But she does not ask for backup. She does not. She's doing all kinds of shit wrong. And she's not controlling the guy. And then she has no control over that scene. Yeah. She's not waiting for backup. She's not trying to kind of de-escalate it. And then she kind of does it. And she's just basically looks like she doesn't know what the hell she's doing. Eventually, the guy charges her, who is much larger than she is, and she shoots at him. Doesn't have any real weapon control. And shoots at him and totally misses and shoots his mother standing way over here.
Oh, wow.
And
I think I've seen this.
Then he ends up kind of taking her. They both fall down, and then right at that time, some G.I. Joe cop shows in and like karate kicks the dude across the
kicks him in the face,
knocks him out, knocks him unconscious.
Well,
there's this officer, female, she for some reason, I don't know if you noticed, but she dropped her gun and it's laying there, and I'm telling my son, I'm like, bro, look, she's got to control her weapon.
Yeah.
And the guy that, like, the G.I. Joe guy, the kung fu dude's like, get your gun, like, get your weapon and put it in your holster. And she's like, makes some kind of noise. And he's like, starts, pick up your weapon and place it in your, like, he's like feeding it to her. And she's like, okay, and does it. She's so, like, her OODA loop's so fucked up that she can't even put her gun in her holster.
Oh, yeah.
Have you seen that video?
It sounds very familiar.
I don't know.
I'm sure as soon as it popped up, I would know where I'm at.
And I'd seen it before, but I let I wanted my son to watch it and be like, hey, so that's exactly how you don't do things.
Yeah.
And my son's a big in shape dude. I'm like, still, you call for backup because you don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah, you don't want to be overconfident.
And that wasn't because she was a female. It was because she wasn't controlling the situation.
Yeah,
exactly. It makes you wonder how people like that, how do they fall through their cracks and were they even able to?
Well, that wasn't the first time she mismanaged a scene. It was just the first time something actually happened bad.
Well, because like how many, like, you know, in the police academy, they throw you in like the scenario-based training. There are so many like scenarios in the academy that are like that, where it's like, hey, you're at a house and you're dealing with this guy, you got to arrest him and his mom's screaming at you, go. Well, like there's so many things like that. So I'm like, how do people pass the academy whenever they don't have
and like I say, she had to have had things, and I hate to spit now, we're starting to armchair, but watching that video, if y'all have seen it, if anybody seen it, I know exactly she's totally out of control, and that's not the first. You don't just not handle shit one time. She's been not handling shit right for many times. Like I said, she just nothing bad happened. But
when everyone has their bad days, I mean.
But if somebody on our team was doing that, we would address it. Damn well better. The sergeant's better to address it and let know. And maybe the person needs to be sent through remediation, and if they can't handle it, they need to be gone.
Yeah. When it's nothing personal, but like this is a very dangerous profession, and at the end of the day, like, it's just business. Like,
yeah,
well, yeah, you
can't
not be.
It's fine. You can be a great person, and it's nothing personal at all. And like, hey, like, good luck to you. You know, have a great life. But like, not everything is for everybody. And
well, hey, and you know what? And they don't need to be thrown into larger agencies or even agencies like ours. You don't want to throw people that aren't handling stuff right into school resource officer.
Yeah.
I mean, that's ridiculous because they're supposed to be protecting kids,
right? Yeah,
not hiding behind a wall.
Yeah. You don't put them. Yeah,
yeah.
But the agencies do that.
Yeah,
a lot of agencies do that. They sit there and they push them to SRO or throw them a detective or throw them wherever they're having a problem. They take them out of that and put them somewhere else. And that is that's just passing a problem around.
Yeah.
One thing agencies do that everywhere.
One thing no one likes to talk about, but it's so true, is like you have an officer who probably shouldn't have made it through the academy, but they did. They end up on the streets, and their teammates, their fellow officers, realize very quickly, like, hey, they're a huge liability, and it's not safe. And so instead of like terminating them, like they probably should, they get thrown into a criminal investigations division. Like, oh, hey, you can do this like more office-related job, and they're still not really a super squared away cop, but they're going to stay at the agency because no one wants to find them.
They plug a hole.
Yes.
And that's...
Yeah.
Well, you hear state agencies doing that too. I mean, I'm not just saying Texas, but
it's a problem everywhere.
They'll sit there and send them to the other side of the state.
Yeah.
And no problems are going to occur there. I mean, you need to deal with the problem that you have, not push it down the road to somebody else or some other supervisor.
Well, and it sucks for the guys that are like me and Fithen that want to be detectives.
Well, yeah.
And... you automatically there's a stereotype there. They're like, well, could you not hack it on the streets?
Exactly.
Like, no, it's just
like that happens so often. Like, oh man, like this guy probably sucked on patrol, so they threw him in CID.
Yeah,
and it's like, well, I would like to think that's not the case.
That was the first agency I worked at. That's what everybody thought. Like it's like, well, they're in CID because they got in trouble.
Well, hey, I bet you in big agencies, I've heard it. I've listened to other podcasts actually that they'll like LAPD and stuff. There'll be some dude that's a total fuck up, and he'll be a lieutenant.
Yeah,
because they'll be like, I don't know, this guy's gonna get somebody killed on the street. Let's move him up to lieutenant.
Now he's
telling everybody how to, 40 guys how to do their job.
That's the idea, though. Is like, hey, this dude isn't safe on the street, so like we gotta get him off the street.
Let's make him your supervisor, Fithen.
Yeah, exactly. Now he's just in charge of you, so that you can go deal with the dangerous stuff because we can't trust him to deal with it.
But he's gonna make decisions on if we should call an ERT team. Or they're gonna make all these like real critical decisions from the department.
Well,
and they could be hacking on patrol.
That causes other problems because now they're in a command position and like, okay, now they've called for a tactical team to come to the situation, and the tactical team gets there, and then they're trying to tell the tactical team what to do, and then the tactical team is like, hey, that's not a good idea. No. But it creates this whole...
And I'll tell you, once we get some canine guys on here as guests, we'll talk about this more, but this is something I was going to bring up because I'm a former canine guy, but agencies, when they have a guy over canine that's never been a canine, and there's a bigger agency in this area that does that. Mm-hmm. The guy over canine has never been a canine before, so he's making decisions on stuff that he knows nothing about.
Right.
And when I was in the canine world, I heard that bigger agencies were notorious for doing that. They'd have a lieutenant over like special services or something that had never been a canine. He's making decisions on where you go get your dog or what kind of unit you're going to get or all these things, and they doesn't know anything about it. And it's just
I know of an agency that did the same thing. With their SWAT team, they put a sergeant over the SWAT team that was not a SWAT guy.
That's never been.
He came from the outside
before,
and he's got all these badass operators with this dude that doesn't know anything about it, trying to tell him what to do. Tell him all what to do. I don't like that one bit.
Don't like it one bit.
Well, that's something that happens. I mean, we hear about it, we know about it, and it never works out.
It's the ugly truth, but
well, it's what sours people. It's what makes SWAT teams end up not having any members, and all the members are brand new, never been on a raid. Stuff like that.
And I think it's kind of shocking for a lot of people, I think, to hear about stuff like this, like kind of the inner law enforcement world turmoil, because again, like I think there's a big misconception that all these agencies operate on the same frequency and we're all the same and we're all just, these police robots, but
not the case at all.
No, it's not. And it's not a perfect world, but I mean,
but you have your guys in these agencies who are super badass and squared away, and they do a great job. And it is weird whenever things happen where it's like, this guy is a rock star and he's like the pinnacle of what a cop should be, but there's someone who has command over him who is like, shouldn't be in at all. Like, but that happens all the time.
Yeah, and it can be dangerous because they're making decisions about what equipment you have or what, you're going to deploy on a house or not, and they really have no experience and no business doing that. Or
pretty much what you were into when you...
Lived it.
Yeah, lived it, been there, done that. But, yeah, okay, so I guess to kind of start to cap this off, so you start out City PD, and, I mean, you go everything from Patrol Division, Criminal Investigations Division, get involved with a tactical team, kind of cycle through that, and then Sheriff's Office, Patrol Division. I know you're a sergeant now. When did you make sergeant at the Sheriff's Office?
Oh.
Like, do you remember about how long you were over there before you made rank?
Probably a year and a half.
Okay.
2 years, maybe.
Yeah, I was going to say, because if you'd done it before, like if you had supervisory experience before, it makes sense.
Well, yeah, that plate course, I was involved in making that decision, and it mattered because he had all these years of experience in another agency. I mean, he wasn't really a lateral transfer over for him for sergeant,
but he came over for
when you're comparing him to some of the other folks that work for us, he's got more experience. He had CID experience, and so that played into that.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and I mean, I guess that's where we're at now is. You and I get to be buddies, be detectives. So good times
for sure.
Yeah,
and we do that when we find somebody because he didn't go up against other folks for sergeant. We just had a conversation with him. It's like, this is something you want to do. Whereas there's been times where we sit there, a couple of people are similarly qualified, then we let them find it out, so to speak. We do some interviews or something. But we're not. I don't see any need to do a dog and pony show. No. And I think it's disrespectful. Say if you had put in for sergeant also, and then we already knew it was going to be him. Well, why would we even have you go through the wasted time? It's not right. You just be like, this is what we're going to do.
With every promotional process or really any team selection, anything like that, you going into whatever you're going to do, whether it's a board interview or a test, there's a good chance that everybody knows already who's going to be promoted.
Well, I think
people that are making those
is like that.
People that are making those decisions know. All right. Well, so and so's gonna get this position, but we got to open it up for everybody else.
Yeah.
Why not cut the bullshit and just?
What's a waste of everyone's time? Yeah. There's a lot of administrative time that's put into that when you already know the answer to it. I mean, there's been times when we've had a group of people and talked to them and do all this stuff, but when we're not going to do that, why waste everyone's time?
Right.
Yeah. Exactly. When I think when you're in that type of situation, your service record kind of speaks for itself, and people know.
We've worked with him for a long time, and it's just.
And if people know that, hey, this guy is the dude who he made this big bust, and he took this huge dude into custody by himself. He's done all these cool things in his career. Clearly, he, his reputation precedes him, and
you've sure his leadership capabilities. He's not making poor decisions on the street where he's violating people's rights, where he's or having cowardice issues, or all these issues that.
Well, your reputation,
some officers have, deputies have. You know that this guy doesn't have those, and so you're like, okay, he's going to work for this position.
Exactly, and your reputation is, that's your currency, especially in law enforcement. But if you don't have a good reputation, you don't make it.
Right. But I always knew deep down that I was more deputy material than I was working for a PD. I wouldn't trade the time that I had at a PD for anything, because I did. I gained a lot of experience, learned how to do some things that. Some of our deputies that have been there for however long still don't know how to do it. It's not their fault. It's just they haven't seen some of the stuff that happens, in a city.
Yeah.
So, but I just knew that being outside the city for a county, that's ultimately where I needed to be. That's where I fit better. Personality-wise, it's just...
I kind of think the same thing, because when I started, I didn't really know if I wanted to be PD or SO or whatever, but I started PD, and I'm glad that I did, because the experience was really good, and I wouldn't trade it for anything. But I moved over to SO just because I liked what that particular agency seemed to be all about, and I liked what looked like direction they were headed. So, but no, there's a lot to be said for that experience. But what are your future career plans, if any? Any further aspirations? Anything you're trying to do?
I'm just kind of riding it out for now. I don't know. Kind of, especially with our industry. Most everybody's kind of in the positions they're going to be in for
for a while.
And I'm okay with that. I love.
But I've been there long enough where you think that, and then all of a sudden, somebody comes in and says, "Well, I'm moving to Dallas or
But I think it's like a chessboard or something.
Yeah.
Like everybody is going to be just moved around to a different position, but still be majority of the same people.
Same group of people.
Yeah.
So it's not going to change it that much,
Yeah, I think you're right. Good group, and it'll be interesting. I'm excited to see kind of how we proceed, and the group of guys that we're working with now. We talked about this in the last episode, but I'm very excited to see in the coming years what kind of things we're able to, what kind of change we're able to affect in the area that we work in, and I think we've got a solid enough group now that we're really gonna deter and solve a lot of crime, which is what we're here to do. So it's going to be a lot of fun, and I'm excited.
I want to show people that it can be done in a smaller area. We have the same problems as the big city does. It's just you know.
Well, like your problems come from people, and anywhere you got people, you're going to have those problems. So that's another that could be its own episode. Is kind of the misconceptions with like smaller agency law enforcement compared to a bigger agency, but like our local county sheriff's office in Texas. It's not exactly the same, but we have a lot of same problems that LAPD has or NYPD has. I mean, it's
definitely
just people doing
the highest volume. The volume's not as much.
It's on a smaller scale, but it's the same problems, same weird things, same naked ladies in a bird bath. I mean, everybody has these stories if they're at an agency of any size. This weird stuff happens.
It's still, foot chases and shootings and car pursuits and
that's what
happens still.
Anyone that I talked like before I got involved in law enforcement, I had the perception of like, oh, I bet like someone from LAPD is like badass, like they've done so much cool stuff and everything, and like I'm sure these guys locally around these towns like probably never done anything like that. And then I got involved in it, I'm like, oh no, like you very much do all that same sort of stuff, just like you said. Different.
Like you had your first day on the job, had that lady that had her mom, in there, to that laundromat with a gun and
like
all that stuff
almost
happened.
Shot some meth head lady day one, and like, oh okay, like that. When we talked about this too, that really like skewed my perception of law enforcement at first. Because like, I guess this is what it's like. Like, I guess every day we're just like, like almost shoot people or whatever.
Well, I guess we can clarify too, because as this podcast goes on and in more episodes, we're going to have people on that aren't from our agency or aren't from around here, and we're going to get their perspective too. But we're just kind of getting the core group of people that are going to be here to kind of get the background behind them. But then as we pull people in, folks that we haven't worked with and things like that as our guests.
It's going to be cool. I'm excited to see where this podcast goes. I think we'll get a little better every episode, and it'll be cool. But I know like us three here, we're going to end up kind of being the core kind of regular contributors to the podcast. And there's one more guy that we're going to have on that schedule wise, we just haven't been able to get him on yet. But probably next episode
which is another guy that we work with.
It's kind of funny how the whole thing started, but we like us two used to be at a different agency, but currently the primary four guys that are going to be regular contributors to this production, we're all working at the same agency. Funny how that works out, but
But as the episodes go on, there'll be people that we don't even know that well, and maybe some phone interviews from people from other states, and we've got a lot of things lined up, and a lot of good guests. I think it's going to be fun and super entertaining, and we always try to have them. Especially some of these guests we have lined up are characters. I mean, the guy that got shot at with the midget with webbed hands, he's a character.
Yeah, for sure.
And then
I got more stories about him, and I'm sure you do too.
Oh yeah,
there's a bunch of stories we can talk about.
Well, and then we get the other guy we talked to on the phone the other day. That's now call him an arms salesman. I don't know. I mean,
basically, he's basically a illegal arms dealer.
Sure, but he had a 10-year law enforcement career, which was quite colorful on the positive way. And almost made a Hallmark special about him, and he can talk about that. So I'm excited at all these different characters and guests we're gonna have.
Yeah, it's a cool world. The whole law enforcement world. It's awesome to be a part of. But I think as far as our second episode on this show goes, I think so far we introduced you, we introduced me a little bit, and we introduced Fisher here, and. Got anything else to add tonight?
No. Look forward to the next one.
Yeah, it'll be cool. Well, next time we'll try and get our fourth contributor on. But until then, yeah, stay tuned and expect some more content on the way from 1023 Podcast. Thanks.